assigned this afternoon the moral sense of children. It led me to a reflection on how St. Francis himself came to understand and realize a filial relationship with the Heavenly Father. We know that he arrived at this sonship in stages. In the beginning, before his conversion, he was a slave of sin. That is before God was servile. Everything we do, one projects an image of God as the judge for sin. And he was before his conversion the son of Pietro Bernardone according to the flesh. And I say it that way not only because Pietro made possible his existence in the flesh, but also because Francis had assimilated the mentality of his father, which was a worldly mentality. As long as he continued this sinful and self-centered kind of existence and clung to his father's value system, he could not relate to his Heavenly Father. Simply because he was not, morally speaking, a son to the Heavenly Father. You know, we all are regenerated by baptism, and that's an ontological union with God, but not a moral union. Be in Christ, but not be like Christ. To be like Christ is moral. And something that we have to strive for all our lives. This is what Francis lacked. Before his conversion, he had neither faith in providence, nor did he treat the men around him as brothers. He rather relied for economic security on his earthly father. He had nothing but contempt for the less fortunate. I mean, an active kind of contempt. He had nothing to do with people who were not of his status, of his social status. Simply ignored them. And that I call an active contempt. It could not be necessarily a conscious one. Then he changed. He started to pray in outlying places and abandoned grottos, shed many tears for his sins. Only after he began to judge himself did he start to show compassion for those around him. He also started to live a poor life in dependence on a provident Father. Culminated, as we know, in the great renunciation. Stood before the bishop and his own father. There he renounced the patrimony and said publicly that from that moment on, he was going to call the Heavenly Father his Father. So that after the renunciation of sin, and after that, after he began to live by faith in providence, he realized his filial intimacy with the Heavenly Father. For that reason, if we're going to arrive at that stage, and I'm talking generally and not to be addressing you personally, because I don't know what stage you're at, right? You all look very mature to me, but I have no idea where you are. I suppose I look very mature to you, but you have no idea where I am in this progress. But we have to renounce sin on the one hand, and on the other we have to come to believe in providence. First of all, I want to say something about sin. What Jesus has to say about sin to motivate us to renounce it. Jesus taught that sin has one root, namely the inordinate love of self. The tendency of the human ego to concentrate all its attention upon its own maintenance and the furtherance of its own ego. That's what sin is. It's an excessive interest in self. Jesus condemned this kind of unchecked self-love, which takes nothing and nobody into its calculations except the self. This is what he condemned. And from this kind of self-centeredness comes all vice and sin. You can see that very clearly by these definitions of vices. Vanity is self-admiration. Arrogance is extravagant self-esteem. Jealousy and envy, sullen anger and hatred are wrong self-assertion. Deceitfulness and untruthfulness are simply attempts to win illicit advantages for the self. Sloth and faithlessness spring from a desire to secure ease for the self. Vaulting ambition is an expression of a desire to exalt oneself over others. Peevishness and bad temper are simply mere animal reactions of resentment to relieve the disordered feelings of self. That's why Jesus made self-denial the cornerstone of his teaching and the cornerstone of discipleship. He said, if anyone wants to follow me, he has to leave all things. He has to deny himself. And by that he did not mean some petty acts of self-denial. He meant that life was no longer to revolve around the self. It was no longer to be merely centripetal, but centrifugal. He said that we have to move out of ourselves in love towards God and towards neighbor as we unify centrifugal. What sin did Jesus particularly condemn? Not the sin of the flesh. Paul has a lot more to say about that because he addressed himself to the Gentiles as well as the Jews, and mostly to the Gentiles, among whom the immorality was right. But Jesus addressed himself only to the Jews, and they were guilty of a religious sin, which is hypocrisy. That's the sin that plagues religious people, hypocrisy. Self-righteousness, this complacency, this feeling, this sense of superiority to others. This is the sin that Jesus particularly condemned. The sin of self-sufficiency, of self-complacency, of self-importance. Why? Because those are the sins that make one unteachable. You are guilty of those sins who are simply unteachable, incapable of growth, and you have a strong tendency to look down with contempt upon others. That's why the sin of hypocrisy is so serious. By the way, we never confess it. Somehow we don't think of it as a specific thing. Now, Jesus quarreled with the Pharisees, about which the Gospels have to say an awful lot, was partly due to their near negative goodness. They seem to have been intent upon avoiding people like dogs. But they forgot that when you are harmless, you may be heartless. And that's what the Pharisee was. He was harmless, but he was heartless. There's no sin worse than that, to be heartless, like dying. Remember dying? was heartless. He simply did not share what he had with Lazarus, who had nothing. That's heartlessness. Dives seem to have observed all the laws of the Bible, except the one that says that you have to have heart. Then Jesus focused attention upon the heart, as really the source of all sin. You recall the text that I quoted yesterday about the heart, how all evil inclinations come from the heart. And he specified insatiableness, which is an over-evaluation of material possessions, and the itch to increase them. When you indulge in insatiableness, then you cannot be serious about the kingdom of God, because you can't serve God and mammon. And again, he spoke of malicious acts, because they bespeak hatred at work in the heart. And deceit, which is the trickery of a crafty man who tries to overreach his fellows. The most notorious example of that of Jacob. I don't know what he did to Esau. And he in turn was deceived by his own sons. And then jealousy, which is the most repulsive, and yet the most natural. You see it in dogs and children. It's a natural passion. It rises unbidden, and it is the antithesis of love, because it breeds a sullen, malicious hatred. You let it work for you, and then it disqualifies the approach of a man to God. And then there is abusive speech, which refers to slanderous and calumnious speech. In other words, speech that is opposed to praise. I guess Jesus had in mind those people who allow their sullen anger to master them, so that they fling words of abuse at others. People today use bad language. Awful lot of it. I remember having a discussion with my niece, who was 19, about bad language. My mother told me that she used it. One day we got into a discussion about it. She said, those are just words. And I said, I don't find them just to be words, because when I use them, I find that they arouse negative feelings and dispositions towards my neighbor. I've changed immediately as soon as I use them. How can you say they are just words? She just listened. I don't know what happened. I felt very strong about that. About the use of bad words. Bad words in general. But bad words. We're very strong about that. Because of what it does to your mind and heart and your disposition. And arrogance. Guilty of that when we look with disdain upon others. Finally, there is moral perversity, which is the worst sin of all. When you are guilty of that, you call good evil and evil good. Now, all this evil, according to Jesus, has to be replaced by goodness. And you can replace this egoism, this self-centeredness, only by the voluntary acceptance of God's reign in your heart. That's why Jesus called for a metanoia, for an inner change. What he asked for is that there be in you an enthusiasm for goodness. Only that can replace egoism, self-centeredness. Goodness has to be internalized. And it is internalized when we accept the will of God as the rule of our lives with enthusiasm. That's not a simple matter to internalize morality. We know from experience how goodness can be ambiguous. The motivation for it. mean, you can perform an act of kindness coldly, or an act of self-denial reluctantly. Or you can perform a good act to escape punishment or bad reputation. Well, in all those instances, you may do a good thing, but for the wrong reasons or for not for the best reasons. So this is the sin that you have to renounce if you want to be intimate. If you want to have a filial relationship with the Father. To be with Him intimately, you have to be like Him. That's the condition. And the other condition for this filial intimacy is that you live by faith in confidence. That's difficult to do when you make a living life. You have to support yourself. It's a difficult thing to do. Jesus speaks about this living by faith in providence in Matthew chapter 6. He begins by saying, I warn you then, do not worry about your livelihood, what you are to eat or drink or use for clothing. Because anyone who is full of care becomes self-sufficient. And that isn't sufficient. Now when Jesus here prohibits worry, he does not mean prudence or foresight, but worry. Prudence and foresight are not worry. And then he gives several reasons why we should not worry, why we should live by faith and providence and not worry. He said, is not life more than food? Is not the body more valuable than clothes? In other words, if God gave you life, He will give you ways of supporting it. If He gave you a body, He will also give you ways of clothing it. So indeed, if He gave us life, He will certainly give us the lesser things. We can trust Him to do so. Then He brings to our attention an example. Look at the birds in the sky. They do not sow or reap. They gather nothing into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Like the sparrow, it is known to work very hard. It works, it doesn't work. Jesus is advising us to work, but not to worry. He continues with his arguments against worry. Which of you by worrying can add a moment to his lifespan? Worrying is futile because it cannot achieve anything. It cannot accomplish anything. That's why we should not worry. And then he speaks about clothes. In that connection, he brings to our attention the flowers. As for clothes, why be concerned? Learn a lesson from the way the wildflowers grow. They do not work, they do not spin. Yet I assure you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was arrayed like one of these. If God can clothe in such splendor the grass of the field, which blooms today and is thrown on the fire tomorrow, will He not provide much more for you, O weak in faith? The flower had only one day of life in Palestine, and then it was used to feed the fire. Yet God takes so much trouble over nothing. You are much more important to the way Jesus are. To give you confidence in your heavenly Father. So as not to worry. Just be concerned. And this is the real effective means for doing away with worry. Be concerned about the kingdom of God on the one hand, and on the other hand, live for the day. Those are the two ways of eliminating worry. So he says, stop worrying then over questions like, what are we to eat? Or what are we to drink? Or what are we to wear? The unbelievers are always running after these things because they have no hope. They've got nothing to look forward to. No wonder they run after food and drink and clothes and all these things. There's nothing else. But we who believe in the invisible kingdom certainly should not make so much fuss about those things. Your Heavenly Father knows. Your Heavenly Father knows all that you need. He looks at it. And I'm sure that you must have had many, many personal experiences with that. I remember one striking instance that came to me. You see this wristwatch? Well, a priest gave it to me. I mean, I don't even know why he sent it to me. I have no idea why he sent it to me. Well, the day I got it, my other watch, stopped. The day I got this thing, the other watch stopped. It just wouldn't go. You may say that was only a coincidence. Well, it could have been a coincidence, but when you have a series of such experiences, you know that there is providence. One experience can be an accident, a coincidence, but not a series. Seek first his kingship over you. That's a wonderful way of translating seek first the kingdom of God. Seek first his kingship over you, that he reign in your heart, that his will guide you interiorly. His way of holiness. And all these things will be given in the time. And the other bit of advice is that we just live for the day. Enough then of worrying about tomorrow. Let tomorrow take care of itself. Today has troubles enough of its own. Well, those are the two conditions of arriving at this filial intimacy with the Heavenly Father. That we renounce sin and that we live by faith and providence. Now, these two things of themselves are not going to really give this intimacy. The Spirit who dwells in us. We have received the Spirit. We have the Spirit. And it is in the Spirit that we are enabled to address the Heavenly, our God as Abba, as Father. That's the teaching of St. Paul in Romans chapter 8, verses 14 to 17. There he writes, all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. You did not receive a spirit of slavery, leading you back into fear. Paul was always upset when Jewish Christians went back to Judaism. Because that dispensation was a dispensation of fear. They did not have the Spirit. And they were afraid of God, of Yahweh. And they fulfilled the commandments out of fear. And he kept reminding the Hebrew Christians that the old dispensation was inferior. That they belonged to a better dispensation and had the Spirit who enabled them to approach the Father like sons and daughters. But a spirit of adoption through which we cry out, Abba, that is, Father. The Spirit himself gives witness with our spirit that we are children of God. But if we are children, we are heirs as well. Heirs with God, heirs with Christ. If only we suffer with him so as to be glorified with him. And I suppose that's the one thing that disturbs our childlike approach to God when something evil happens to us. Then we get to wonder whether he loves us. And we imagine that he has rejected us. And we allow this imagination and these negative feelings to ferment in our hearts, and we lose that sense of intimacy towards the Heavenly Father. Now, Paul writes over and over again about these sufferings and trials and tribulations that come to sons and daughters. They do not come to us to crush us. When these things happen, we have to have even more trust and more confidence in the Heavenly Father and believe that these things happen to us for a purpose. Maybe they give us the opportunity to suffer for the mystical body. Anyhow, that's the way Paul took it. he encountered so many difficulties in his apostolic life. What does he say about them? In Colossians chapter 1, verse 27, he wrote, "Even now I find my joy in the suffering I endure for you." I'm just going to wait until the sister turns it over. Oh. Because this is an important text. In my own flesh, I fill up what is lacking in the sufferings of Christ for the sake of his body, the church. He saw himself as a continuing instrument of Christ's passion. He believed that Jesus, who is now risen and can no longer suffer, continues his passion in us. That's the reason why he suffered. It's not a sign of rejection. Must have fallen into sin, into serious sin. Then it may very well be that what we suffer we deserve. But do not conclude that just because there are difficulties that you have rejected, they may rather be a sign that you are indeed beloved. That the Heavenly Father is treating you like his own son, giving you occasion to do vicarious suffering for the church, because that is the highest charity. Looks like we have a very pleasant day ahead of us. So quiet around here that it's a pleasure. Most of the time I live in a big city, as I suppose many of you do, and there's quite a contrast. This morning my subject is the witness of presence. It's a difficult notion for Americans to understand. This idea of the witness of presence. I live in a community that gives that kind of witness. And invariably when people pay us a visit, they ask, "What do you do?" Well, that's not the main question. Just to be there and to give witness to God's existence and God's love is the primary witness. Jesus speaks of it, of this kind of witness of presence, in terms of salt and light. He said, "You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world." The image of salt suggests that the Christian should have an antiseptic influence. That is to say, by his presence he should defeat and overcome moral corruption. And he should make it easier to be good. And then again, Jesus uses the image of light. By that he simply meant that discipleship should not be secret. The fact that you follow Christ, that should not be secret. It should be visible. It should be an example to follow. This does not mean that your goodness should be theatrical. Our good deeds should be attractive, but we should not attract attention to ourselves. If people see that we are good, they should glorify God, as Jesus said. Because after all, the goodness that is visible in us comes from another source. We simply radiate a borrowed light, like the moon. Francis favored this witness of presence. He writes about it in the 16th chapter of the Rule of 1221. What he says is,
friars to unbelievers, he suggests that they live among them in two different ways. Here's what he writes. The brothers who go can conduct themselves among them spiritually in two ways. The first way is this witness of presence. One way is to avoid quarrels or disputes and be subject to every human creature for God's sake, so bearing witness to the fact that they are Christians. Just to behave meekly, kindly, graciously, mercifully is a witness. That's the witness of presence, and that is sufficient, and that's the primary apostolate. And then, of course, there's the second way. Another way is to proclaim the Word of God openly when they see that it is God's will. We are familiar with that. In fact, we always think of the apostolate in that active way. The special aspect of this presence of witness is that it is prophetic, because you have to live in such a way that you do not conform, but confront. You don't conform to the world, but you confront the world. You are, in a way, a critic and a model of society. You criticize society by the very way you live, and you show society how to live. Is there any reward for this kind of service, for this kind of witness of presence? Jesus speaks about a reward for total service in Matthew chapter 6. That's the Sermon on the Mount. Here's what he says in chapter 6, verse 1. Be on guard against performing religious acts for people to see. Otherwise, expect no recompense from your heavenly Father. Then he goes on to say that we should expect a reward, but not from men, rather from God. He gives this instance of almsgiving. When you give alms, for example, do not blow a horn before you in synagogues and streets, like hypocrites looking for applause. You can be sure of this much: they are already repaid. In giving alms, you are not to let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Keep your deeds of mercy secret, and your Father who sees in secret will repay you. Today, there is some question whether reward has any place in Christian life, whether one should do anything for reward. I recall having a conversation with a Protestant minister who was a follower of Tillich. He told me frankly that he did not believe in eternal life. And I said, well, then why do you do what you do? He was obviously a very fine Christian who spent himself for many causes. And he said, because it's just the right thing to do. Which to me didn't make any sense, because if there is no afterlife, then there is no direction to life at all. There's no sense to it. Everything is absurd. So that nothing really is worthwhile. But that was his mentality, and I must admit that I don't understand it at all. Because if there were no reward, I don't think I would do anything worthwhile. I wouldn't see any sense to it. Now, he called that mercenary, which I didn't understand at all. Because to me, when I speak of reward, I'm thinking of being with God. I'm thinking of fellowship. That's what I'm thinking of. And I think that's worthwhile aiming for. You know, to be in the presence of God and to enjoy fellowship with Him, I think that's wonderful. On the other hand, if there is no such thing, well then I don't see any reason for spending myself in any cause. But he was suggesting that one should not do good with hope of reward. That one should be good just for the sake of being good. That virtue is its own reward. And that reminded me of a saint who said that he would quench the fires of hell with water, and he would burn up the joys of heaven with fire, just so that men might see goodness for its own sake. Well, I think this good saint did not have in mind what my good Protestant minister friend had in mind. A good saint was simply saying that one should do good just to please God, not with any ulterior motives in mind. I would go along with that. Anyhow, Jesus himself speaks of reward, and rightly, because a goodness that has no sanction is futile. If there were no sanction, there would be no point in being good. Now, the reward that Jesus speaks about is not a material one, as was the case with Job's friends. You recall, Job lost everything, and his friends concluded that he must have sinned. They were insinuating that he did not have it good because he was not good. Well, the whole point in their reasoning was that a man should receive temporal blessings for being good. But Jesus doesn't say that. In fact, he warns that earthly blessings may not be forthcoming. That we can very well expect all kinds of trials and tribulations and loss. Nor did Jesus take a legalistic view of reward. He did not commend the person who looks for a reward and who calculates, how much am I going to get out of this? Who thinks of life in terms of debits and credits, like a balance sheet. Rather, he commended the person who doesn't see himself as deserving of reward, and whose only motive in doing right is the love of God. In other words, Jesus teaches that we should do good just to please the Heavenly Father, and the reward will be an invitation to participate in that Trinitarian fellowship. That's what Jesus teaches. That's the kind of reward that he talks about. There are rewards for a life of goodness and a life of service. I can think of three. First of all, satisfaction. Certainly, obedience to the law of Jesus brings fulfillment. You are happy when you do good because you satisfy the appetite that you have to be good. Everyone has an appetite to be good. That great desire to do the right thing. That's why guilt and the sense of guilt is so disturbing, because you know that you haven't done the right thing, the good thing. You have frustrated your deepest desire, which is the desire to do good. And the second reward is more work to do. A task well done does not bring retirement, but greater demands. So that when you're docile to grace, you would be called to do more demanding things. And the third reward is the vision of God. Because if a man all his life seeks to walk with God, if he has sought to obey him, if goodness has been his quest all his days, well then, all his life he has been drawing closer to God, and it's no surprise that he should find himself with God. I think the best example of this witness of presence by the way, is that of the Little Sisters. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but we have contact with them in Chicago, the Little Sisters of Jesus. They don't undertake any apostolate. They simply are present. Simply are present. They simply live among the people. And there, in their apartments, they have the Blessed Sacrament, and they spend at least 2 hours a day in adoration. To adore Him who is present among people who do not know about His presence, who do not believe in His presence. This is the witness of presence. And when you talk with them, you sense the divine presence. You know that they are before God. They are witnesses to His transcendence and to His immanence. You sense that they are before God and that they are sensitive to men's needs. Now that's the witness of presence. I think that this kind of witness is of great importance for you in your life because you are very involved in the temporal order. Your part should not be ordinary. Your part in the temporal order should be extraordinary, in the sense that you should transcend it. You have to bring to it a living faith, so that when you mingle with people, they sense something extraordinary about you among them. They should sense that. They should sense that not only because you bring a Christian conscience to bear on your work, but they should sense that there is someone present right there who is above all. In other words, you shouldn't be in your work with this motive, another day, another buck. That's not why you're working. You are there to give witness, and not by talking. I understand that you're not supposed to reveal that you are a missionary of divine kingship, that you are a Christian who feels strongly her responsibility to promote the cause of Christ. But there's no need to talk, really. Because if you are present to God, that will be sensed by the people around you. And if you are disposed to fulfill His will in everything you do, you will certainly confront people. You will give a witness. You will be different. And people will sense that. It will be disturbing to them. I'm encouraging for those who are of good will. Well, that's all I have to say. I'm sorry that I'm so brief, but it's just the way my mind works. I speak in a laconic way, in aphorisms. I don't beat around the bush. I don't describe. I don't use many images. I don't tell stories. I seem to be oriented towards principles. I speak in terms of principles. And all I said this morning is that the witness of presence is primary. What you do is not so important. What you are is important. That's why you have to take care to be filled with divine presence. During a retreat, you have to imbue yourself with the divine presence so that when you return to the world, as they say, and again become involved in the temporal order, the people may sense the divine in you. You don't even have to talk about it. But if you are standing before Him at all times,